Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. Hyperhedgy family. This speech will not inspire you. This speaker, me, will not educate you on questions Google can answer. This speech will not make you exceptional for having attended. What you do beyond viewing is the true measure. This presentation will not give you what you wish to get out of these 30 minutes. Do not hear, listen, do not see, watch, and most importantly, do not know, understand. I would like to start by reading a poem of mine. Why I, a voice upon many, a dinghy upon galleons, my suffering a minutia of experience among libraries containing libraries of oppression, of systemic, of that goddamned word. Why I am the one who tells their story of ableism. Why I who finds himself treated like the rest, whose pains are only punches in the gut, when others are barbed wire, shredding their tongues, their minds made mush from numbness, the everyday actions of ableism moving back and forth till the neurons are pulverized, till the voices are only empowered to be voiceless. Why I, the one from the darkness, the white one who passes as male, who shudders at the thought of the R word that no one would ever dare call me, until they learn who I am. I can hear it now. Kids whispering as if the deaf can't hear. He's so retarded. I'd kill myself if I were him. Raise your hand if you don't want to wake up tomorrow disabled. Raise your hand if you would be embarrassed, ashamed, don't know where to throw your body. Looking inward is what we do. We judge ourselves, not society. Ableism is a thick smoke we can't see, poisoning our minds and burning our eyes and throats. Ableism will not end when the blind can see and the deaf can hear, because I am still here. Why I? Why I? Why I my story among hundreds? Thank you. Every single person with a disability has their own story. We number about 1 billion people, and I am just one of those people. We have the least representation in government and society, and by me being here, I am a part of this disproportionate representation. My story begins in Newton, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. When I was born, the doctors diagnosed me with complete hearing loss. My parents, among finding this out, immediately sought to educate themselves on my diagnosis. They searched for deaf figures, role models they could find who lived a normal life. At the time of my birth, they knew no deaf people, especially those with cochlear implants. They had not yet had their stories widely told. To create my own story, my parents had one expectation for me, that I would perform to my full potential. Within a few months of me being born, they learned about a device called a cochlear implant, which can act as a bionic ear. Armed with this new implant, at the age of 1, it became my way of performing to the best of my ability. Some said it was dangerous for me to play soccer, since they thought that my implants could get damaged or fall off. When I told my parents I wanted to play soccer, they threw a ball in my face, and I became a part of the Newton Youth soccer team. I sucked at it really bad, but I played until I felt it was time to move on. Some said it was dangerous for me to go swimming. When I told my parents that I wanted swim lessons, they worked with coaches to create hand signals to teach me how to swim. I eventually became one of the first people to use an aqua accessory, a waterproof casing for my implants that allows me to swim, dive, and even go whitewater rafting. Some said I wouldn't ever learn spoken English. When I told my parents I wanted a book full of dinosaurs, they bought me one and I learned how to pronounce every single dinosaur name. Once, I was at my audiologist and she was testing my pronunciation skills. Can you say Tyrannosaurus Rex? Tyrannosaurus Rex. Can you say Brachiosaurus? Brachiosaurus. Can you say Diplodocus? Yes, it is Diplodocus. Ah, good times. Some said I would never speak a second language. When I told my parents that I wanted to learn Spanish, whoa, hold up, let's back up here. Learning Spanish was not a straightforward process for me like it is for hearing kids. When I graduated elementary school, when I graduated elementary school, I was supposed to go to Bigelow Middle School, the better of the two in my neighborhood, according to my dad at least. However, I was ordered to go to Day Middle School because they had a program for the deaf. This was my first personal encounter with ableism. Ableism is discrimination against people with disabilities. Every single person with a disability has experienced multiple forms of ableism, each encounter unique to their story. My parents had successfully shielded me from ableism for most of my life up until middle school. They had to fight insurance companies to get my second cochlear implant, literally writing pages of letters and threatening to take them to court. That is ableism at work, to deny a child full hearing because of greed when the technology exists. All those things my parents heard other people, deaf and hearing, say about me, how I would never play sports, never dip into water, never learn a second spoken language, let alone one. My parents insisted on raising me to my full potential, that I could do anything I set my mind to. That is ableism at work, telling my parents what I can't do. But the time had come for me and my story to reckon with ableism. I went with my parents to check out Day Middle School, where the deaf kids go. My parents met with the man who ran the program for the deaf at Day. My dad told him that I was a hard worker, got good grades. The man explained to my parents that me going to Day would be better for me because Day already had interpreters and special programs in place for the deaf. This is ableism at work. He assumed that just because I was deaf, I would need a sign language interpreter and to be placed in such classes. We talked expectations with the man. My parents raised me with the expectation that I would perform to my full potential, whatever that may be. To that man, that full potential is already set. A factory job. I would get a job suitable for the deaf, minimum wage, perhaps less, isolated, and forget college. That was for hearing kids. They expected me to be fluent in sign language, which I was not. I was set to get 1 year of English in a basic course, no foreign language. This was the story for the deaf. This is what my story was supposed to be. After hearing this, my parents asked, why? The man was confused. There is no question about all this. These are the classes for the deaf. End of story. Then I spoke up. Yeah, why do I have to take these classes? I'm perfectly fluent in English. The man was flabbergasted, shocked that I spoke a word of English. He nearly fainted in disbelief. Just kidding, that never happened. But I wish I did speak up, because that is ableism at work. Setting low expectations because of one's ability. In that school, knowing basic English was considered good for a kid like me. In my house, it was an advanced composition or a long lecture from Dad. And yet, despite all these challenges, I am one of the lucky ones. I am, in fact, one of the most privileged deaf kids I know. The love and support of my parents is something that few children like me are lucky enough to have. They never gave up on trying to give me equal opportunities, even when the haters told them what I couldn't do, even when the insurance companies rejected them not once, not twice, but 3 times before I got my implants covered. Even when I was to be sent to middle school, unsuitable for my needs, my parents fought for me to be schooled at my level. I have white and male privilege, unlike most people with disabilities. The other identity I've working against me is my sexuality. As a gay man with a disability, my parents had concerns about me attending college in a red state. Now, I realize that not all intersectionalities are equal. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're a Black person with complete hearing loss, driving down the freeway. You push a little bit too much over the speed limit, and you see the blue and red lights flash. These cops are not here to protect you. They never were. Your breathing intensifies as you pull over, your heart pounding, as you lower your window and raise your hands, knowing that 50% of people brutalized by cops have a disability and 32% are Black. You have both, making your odds of getting out alive quite slim compared to most. The cop comes up to your car and says something that you can't hear. Your vision is getting foggy from the stress and anxiety. This may be how it ends. Did you catch that? 50% of people brutalized by cops have a disability. And I'm still waiting for the so-called allies to show up for it. I also have a sort of able-bodied privilege. I can hide my disability if I so desire. In fact, I did for some of high school by growing my hair long. I found that during that time, people weren't as ableist and talked to me simply because they couldn't see my implants. I have lived hiding my disability in a desire for my story to be one of the able-bodied world. Imagine the story of someone who cannot hide their disability, someone who is forced to wear it and suffer the stigma with every passing gaze, every door held open and the one slammed shut in their face. Think of every time you have stared at a wheelchair user. How would you feel if you were the one in the chair? And every day, I am the one in the chair. I'm not trying to equate our experiences. Rather, I want to draw a comparison, as in I'm the one who has no choice but to live with my disability. But my disability does not limit me. My disability is not what disables me, but rather society, which sets limitations on what I can and cannot do. If I had accepted these limitations, I wouldn't be here now. I would be trapped in that ableist world and mindset. In fact, just 16% of people with disabilities have a bachelor's degree, less than half of those without disabilities. Simply by me being here and performing to my full potential, there's hope for change. Simply by me defying all expectations, there's hope for change. This hope goes by another name, deaf joy. Deaf joy is rising despite the forces of ableism. While ableism is like gravity, invisible and always tugging, deaf joy is how I win, by pushing back. Deaf joy is when I win by speaking Spanish. This is the first big experience I had with deaf joy. I was awarded the Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, the most prestigious award for high school Spanish speakers in Massachusetts. I cannot express the happiness I felt in that moment. It is the seal of how far I've come. It shows that I'm fluent in the language. Being fluent in 2 spoken languages is the best slap in the face I can imagine for those who said I'd never learn anything beyond sign language. He practicado español por más de 8 años. Hablarlo es mi superpoder. I have practiced Spanish for over 8 years. Speaking it is my superpower. Language is my story. I love it. My first language, American Sign Language, is one I want to relearn am currently working on being more fluent in speaking. I love sign language. I have also dabbled in Portuguese, but mas não falo muito bem. Hawaiian too. I love the language and grammar. Learning languages, aole pilikia. Deaf joy is when I win by backpacking. I love to backpack, but people have had serious doubts about my ability to do so. The first time I went, I was extremely nervous that my implants would get damaged. I wouldn't hear danger or they'd run out of power. In reality, I found that backpacking is an escape from the constraints of ableism. No one judges your ability in the outdoors, just how much faster you can run than your partner from a bear. Backpacking is my story. It is so comforting to be outside in a world where mutation is the norm. On my biggest trip, I went 75 miles in 6 days through the Bob Marshall complex. And ableism, I was untouchable. Deaf joy is when I win by being heard. I found that those who are discriminated against often have the best listening skills. When I made a post to Instagram about ableism, the first 3 people to reach out to me were people of color. I think they understand, like I do, that ableism is a system of oppression, and it takes love and joy to undo it. My great friend, Kaamwana Hina, gave me the courage and strength to tell my story. He asked that I speak at the Student Senate, which eventually got me heard at the monthly President's Cabinet meeting. It is because of him and my story on ableism has reached so far and wide. It is because of me and my story that I am here now. Deaf joy is when I win by dancing. Now, don't get me wrong, I am horrible at dancing, but boy, do I love it. When I take the bus from Lewis and Clark to university, I'm often listening to music, usually in Spanish. I love to shake my shoulders, walk to the beat, sway my hips. It gives me such joy to know a song and to express my emotion. Not only is Kaamwana my great friend, he is also my kumuhula, hula teacher. He gave me the gift of hula, a traditional Hawaiian dance. It is with hula that I come full circle on my story. When I came to college, I tried out Kyle's hula class. Partway through the sweating, my janky kaholo, my struggle to make flowers with my hands, I discovered something deep down inside, a rainbow of joy bubbling and bursting with every move. Every move in hula is intentional, and it brought me back to sign language, my native language. And not only that, hula needs the spoken Hawaiian language to fully express the message. It utilizes both visual and auditory elements, like I did and still do as a deaf person who can hear. Hula and dance has liberated me, and I cannot thank Kyle enough for his gift. I have one more poem in dedication and gratitude to everyone who is a part of my story. To dance is to be free. To dance is to know that how you look is other people's problem, that I can feel the note reverberating in my nerves, my muscles lunging with the chant. To be free is to shake those shoulders on the bus and bop your head as if the only one who is watching is no one. To dance is a prayer to joy, my joy when I remember that I have superpowers too. My implants are like a nautilus curling around my ear. Into the cochlea, a nautilus upon nautilus. I spiral out the rainbows in my mind, so full of pride and joy, the rainbows dribbling from my teeth. Every sound is a flavor. I can taste the rhythm, the beat of poetry to music, to sound my ancestors never thought I would hear. My poetry is music from the deaf for the deaf. I am my parents' wildest dreams. I am here. I am sound that can hear. This day I promise to love the world and I love myself. The wind that tosses my hair is pulled into my ventral and released into the sunset I see with my eyes. So beautiful, so full of quietness. I am the silence that hears. And when I dance, I am free again. And when I dance, I am free again. Because of ableism, I was taught that my deafness is shameful, something to hide. Ableism laced every word, tainted my actions. Ableism was a lifestyle. And even then, I'm only one in a billion. My story is important, but far from the only one you should be listening to. Please understand that there are so many of us. Odds are that you live with someone with a disability on your block or even your neighborhood, each of us with our own unique stories. But my story is so much more than ableism. It is joy too. It is the joy that this ableist world needs. It is the joy that comes when our minds and hearts are at last no longer disabled by our hidden biases. It is the joy I get in life every time I go against expectations. It is the joy that I get by being me. And with that, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed this talk. Gracias, obrigado, mahalo, thank you.
Ben, I am certain that I speak for us all that that was absolutely amazing. We have a couple minutes for questions. So I have one that I know you covered it a little bit in your speech, but I just wanted to follow up a little bit and ask about the impact of poetry on your joy and how that's helped you to connect with language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I really like poetry because unlike normal essay writing, you're allowed to play a little bit with the rules. It doesn't have to follow exact grammar or structure, and that's why I really enjoy it. I feel it's a really artistic way to express my message fully. And poetry can be about anything you want. It really allows me to get creative, and I love that about poetry.
That's awesome. And for those of you who don't know or haven't heard more of Ben's poetry, as I'm certain you saw during this, it's incredible. Very inspiring. And one last question in our last little bit of time. What gives you the most hope going forward about reducing stigma and ableism for people in general?
I would say what gives me the most hope is that we're in a time where people are trying to become more aware and willingly educate themselves on the hidden biases they have. And I think that there's no time like the present to really address ableism and to learn about other people's stories. I really hope that what you take away from this is that working on ableism, just like racism, sexism, homophobia, is a lifetime of work to undo what we've learned and to really listen to other people. So that's really what gives me hope that this is the time. Maybe 20 years ago would have been better, but really this is the time that we can use to our advantage to begin working on dismantling ableism.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. This was an incredible presentation. If anyone else has any other quick questions that you'd like to send along for the chat. But yeah, as Denise just said in the chat that I'm going to read out loud because I think it sums it up perfectly. Great presentation, Ben, and keep spreading your joy.
Thank you, Denise.